Welcome to Random Conflux, where today we are talking about, I don't know, what are we talking about?
Well,
YouTube, what do you want to talk about?
Well, if we're going by the keynotes I wrote, we're talking about a lot of things, including mushrooms and penguins. And
People probably think we're already on mushrooms.
now, jokes aside,
But that's besides the point.
we are talking about. We've talked about art multiple times, but this time we're going to talk about some of our games we find the most artistic in like each generation from the game systems that we've played.
And just to clarify, we're not just talking about picture quality. We're talking about the music with that game,
How the gameplay flows.
The design aspect of it, the audio aspect of it. Does it hurt your eyes if you go back and replay it?
Yeah.
Or does it look cheesy or corny if you go back and replay it?
Yeah.
Something that covers all the bases more than any other game on your mind. So it's not just like an artsy topic as in visual.
It's a bunch of different aspects.
Yeah, it's another art topic all around.
Yeah, and if there's any that we don't mention that you would like to talk about, please mention some in the comments. And just future-proofing, some of the gameplay may come from the remasters. I'm going to state that right now. They look a little nicer, so I can't do a one-for-one comparison.
Or emulators.
Yeah.
Because you probably don't have a lot of the older systems.
Yeah.
I mean,
I have them. They're hard to hook up.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you probably still have them. And they're just stored away somewhere.
Yeah.
But without further ado, here's what we're going to judge these games on. We're going to judge them on how the graphics compare to other games of that genre. And we're going to judge the way that the music connects with the game over that genre.
Yeah.
So...
And as far as music goes, I know it's an easy cop-out, so I'm going to try to avoid it. I won't say Final Fantasy for each generation, even though they have beautiful music.
Well, it has to be one game per generation.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about Super Nintendo,
One that really stands out.
Think of all the Super Nintendo games you played. Which one connects to you more visually and has one of the best audio backgrounds to it? And I'm pretty sure a lot of people are probably like, Mario! Mario doesn't count.
Depends on what's Mario. Yeah. But that said, let's go ahead and start.
Well, we'll start with the oldest because I'm pretty sure we both have had Commodores. We both have had Ataris. We both have had Super Nintendo.
I've never had an Atari.
You've never had an Atari?
No, I've had a Commodore.
Okay.
You can state a game you think's good on Atari. That's fine.
Regular Nintendo, NES, Super NES, Sega, Sega Genesis, Sega Dreamcast, PlayStation 1, 2, 3, Xbox 360.
I didn't have an Xbox.
And Xbox One.
I didn't have an Xbox, but I played plenty of Xbox games, so I can tell you some of my opinions on those.
Okay. Did I leave anything out?
If not,
Nintendo 64 and GameCube.
Yeah, we'll cover those, I'm sure. We'll go first. I haven't played it, so this is all you. Atari.
Atari, one of the best games for that system, and everybody's okay to disagree with me, and it's just my opinion. But the first Terminator game,
Okay.
it played like Asteroids, and they had a I think they had a redo from it and like upscaled it for like better quality for the regular Nintendo, and then they did one for Super Nintendo. But that's as much as I know about that game. But during like for it to be like an Atari game, graphic wise, it's better than Asteroids.
Yeah.
Because you have like different. I mean, it's still like an 8-bit game.
Does Atari even count as 8-bit? It's almost like 4-bit.
But you can tell what the characters are. And it's a lot more appealing on the eyes.
Yeah.
And you don't hear a lot of that static with the background music as you do with like the older Tetris games or Asteroid or I think it was Battleship or Battle Station where you had to like shoot other ships out of the water. That So to me, like Terminator was one of the better games for that generation.
Yeah. Just because I haven't played Atari, I'm just gonna say ET so I can get smashed. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, if you're gonna talk about an ET game like the ET for PlayStation 1, wasn't that bad.
No, I was joking.
Really good game.
No, I just joke because that's supposed to be like one of the worst games ever.
Oh yeah.
Nah, jokes aside, a system I have played was the Commodore 64. I actually had a decent collection of games for it.
I've had that too. One of the things that I did was I hooked up my Atari to it.
I think you told me that.
Yep.
Now, Pitfall was a really good game for that.
Oh yeah. If you had, I didn't have it for the Commodore. I had it for the Atari. But when I hooked my Atari up to the Commodore, it allowed me to play on there, which was really cool.
Now, what I had was I had the disc version, the floppy disk, for Commodore, and it was a good game.
Did it play like Fault Boy from what was it, Pit Boy?
Pretty much, it was Pitfall. A Commodore game that you think was graphically impressive.
Commodore game that I thought was graphically impressive. Crap. I don't remember the name of it, but it was more of like a learning game. You had to do a bunch of math problems in order to not crash the plane. And every right thing you did would keep the plane in the air, but if you made one mistake, like the plane would crash.
Like, not the best to play, but it had a really good like visual and audio.
Yeah, it actually had really good music in the background, which I thought was fun to listen to. And the plane, yes, it was like, it looked like someone drew a plane on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
But I think that was the art style they were going with, because it was supposed to be like, the screen looked like a piece of notebook paper. And it looked like what you would doodle in a classroom. So to me, that kind of was like a little bit of like impressive artwork compared to like other games that are games rather than like one that was originally meant for like a school environment.
Makes sense. Okay, now next step up, Super Nintendo / Sega Master System, because we're both
Well,
8-bit.
instead of going straight to Super Nintendo, how
Or
about
regular Nintendo, I meant
Nintendo?
regular, yeah. For me, NES, games I've played, best looking, I would say maybe the original Kirby that came out for it.
That was like later in the
Yeah.
generation of it.
That's
that
when they knew how to
would be-
use the Nintendo for like all it was worth.
I would say more to like the beginning of its cycle.
Yep. If we're talking earlier games, maybe Mega Man, as far as how it looked.
I would probably agree with that. Mega Man or not the regular gameplay of Zelda for it, but like the cutscenes for Zelda.
If we're talking music and stuff like that, yeah, Zelda. Because Legend of Zelda was for the regular Nintendo a beautiful game. That's actually, you're right about that.
Well, that's kind of what I'm thinking of basing this on.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
the visual and the audio.
Yeah, well, Zelda, no doubt. I wasn't even thinking about that. Because the original Legend of Zelda was very good. Actually, a lot of the Nintendo games were good. Zelda, Kirby, Mario, they all look stunning.
Well, to me, Mario didn't really have like a really good soundtrack to it.
No, the best soundtrack out of that era...
It sounded like it kept skipping.
Now, the best soundtrack out of the Mario games in that area, like, was probably Mario 3. But that's just me. Maybe 2. If you're talking Mario games.
For the regular Nintendo?
Yeah.
Well, Sonic kind of had a situation. I don't know if it's because I had bad cartridge or what, but Sonic had like a bad soundtrack to me.
Depends on what Sonic game. We're not in that area, though.
Sonic 1, like the very first Sonic.
You're talking the one for Master System?
The original Sega.
Yeah, that was the Master System. Because Sonic 1 and 2 actually came out on the Master System and on the Genesis.
Yeah.
They were two different types of games, but they're both very good. The one for Master System, it had... You're right about the sound not being the best. Visually, though, it was okay.
Visually, like, it could have been better, but I think the sound could have been way better. Because when Sonic 2 came out with Sonic and Tails,
yeah,
the sound quality improved so much.
Oh, Sonic, yeah. Now, if you're talking the Sonic games, when we get up to that, for the Sega Genesis, I have to go Sonic 3 or Sonic 3 and Knuckles. But now, if you actually have the newer version for the Sonic like Generations Collection or whatever you call it, Origins, that's it. They cut out a lot of that music because of the whole Michael Jackson thing. But that's played the original. It has some really nice tracks. I won't tell you how to get your hands on that though.
Well, they could probably get it off of line or like eBay or whatever.
Yeah, it's up to them how they get it.
I mean,
there's ways.
There's
it's cheap enough.
Many ways. Like thrift stores could probably sell it.
Yeah.
But to me, like, I think for regular Nintendo, for me, people are probably gonna be like, Zelda.
Zelda's up there, but
the original Zelda, when you had control of Link, the background music wasn't that impressive, and the visuals wasn't really all that impressive. But the audio and the visuals during the cutscenes, like, mind blown.
If you can even call that a cutscene, it was like the title screen and a couple other things, but I know what you're talking about.
Well, anytime that they had the cutscenes, I'm talking about the one that took the cutscenes from the cartoons.
I've never heard of that.
Maybe I'm wrong,
You might be.
but I have to go back and double check it. But it was Legend of Zelda 1. But gameplay wise, like that wasn't really something that I would go back to.
Yeah. Of course, then again, sometimes it is harder to go back to regular Nintendo in those games. Not that I don't, I enjoy them, but
There's one that stuck out with me during that era. I can't remember the name of it. And a close second in like facials and audio. Duck Hunt.
You think Duck Hunt?
For the Super Nintendo, not Super Nintendo, but the regular NES.
I could kind of see it. It wasn't a bad looking game.
Like, when you looked at the creatures she had to shoot, like they looked pretty realistic. And like the audio from that game, just the sound of the gun firing alone, it didn't sound like 8-bit or 16-bit. It sounded like someone recorded a rifle round. And even though like the game was most popular played with the gun controller, but yeah, that game was very impressive.
Yep. Now, another game from that same area for the Sega Master System, I'd probably say maybe Phantasy Star. That was a pretty good looking game for the time.
I'll have to look that one up because the earliest Sega was the flat Sega, the small flat Sega.
Yeah.
I had that, and then I had the larger Sega with the rounded top.
Yeah.
That had like the volume control for the headphones.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I had those two Segas.
Now, if we're talking Sega Genesis, that system, Sonic 3 was good. I don't know if it was. I wouldn't say it's the best looking Sega Genesis game, but it was fun.
Well, Sonic 3, that one's the one that had an extra cartridge port on top for Sonic 2, right?
Sonic and Knuckles had that. And you could plug in Sonic 2, and you could plug in Sonic 3, and you could have, like, different games that way.
Okay.
Yeah. That was good. You want to talk a really good-looking game for the time? Comic Zone. Because it had, like, every, like, area was like a panel of a comic. And that was done pretty well.
Going on Super Nintendo for a second. Aracobat.
What was it called?
Arachnobat.
Never heard of that.
You need to look it up. Really cool game. For its time, like graphics very pleasing, audio very pleasing, gameplay very smooth. It covers like all corners.
That's cool.
Really cool game. And the lowdown is you are a bat trying to escape a circus.
Now, we're talking graphically impressive. I know you're not a fan of turn-based, but I got to throw it out there. Chrono Trigger.
Isn't that a more recent game?
No, it was Super Nintendo first. It's been released on everything since then. Well, not everything, but a lot of things.
Oh, okay, that Chrono Trigger.
Yeah.
Like the very first game that really took turn-based to a whole new level.
Yeah, because it was made by the people that it did. It was made by the company that did Final Fantasy, Square Soft at the time. The art style was from Akira Toriyama, the guy that did Dragon Ball. And for the 5 of you that have never heard of Chrono Trigger. And
it's basically the thing that started the revolution for
It didn't really
Blue Dragon, Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy was a thing before Chrono Trigger, but it was definitely up there as far as like what helped it.
Well, Final Fantasy was the end of a game, to be precise, in the beginning of a new game.
Yeah, because that was around since regular Nintendo. But Chrono Trigger was good.
I might actually do some Final Fantasy facts, but anybody that's been around and watched G4 when it was
back when it was a thing,
they did a whole thing about Final Fantasy and what it was before it was Final Fantasy. Yeah. Because the word...
It was supposed to be the final...
The title of Final Fantasy was to say that it was the final chapter of that story.
Yeah.
But people love that game so much that they put a new line of just Final Fantasy game.
It basically saved the company too.
Yeah, and I thought it was Chrono Trigger's Final Fantasy.
No. Chrono Trigger was made by the same company. It had a lot of similarities to Final Fantasy, but it wasn't Final Fantasy. It was
because this came out way before Final Fantasy was even a thing. No, and the last game in its... and there's a reason why I'm going to be mentioning this anyways. And I'm kind of skipping a few years and systems.
There's actually only two games that from the Chrono Trigger series. There was Chrono Trigger for Super Nintendo and Chrono Cross for the PS1.
Well, I'm not talking about Chrono Trigger.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm talking about the game that...
Oh, yeah.
Or, like... Final Fantasy originated from.
Oh, okay.
And I can't remember the name of it, but one of the reasons why I'm thinking of it is because I had it, and I can't remember the freaking name of it. And I can't remember what freaking system it was on.
Not a big deal.
I wanted to say that it was like late Super Nintendo, early Nintendo 64. But I can't, for the life of me, remember the game. But I only played like the very last installment of that game, which had Final Fantasy in the title. But it was before Final Fantasy 1 came out.
Because Final Fantasy 1 was on the regular Nintendo.
Because Final Fantasy 1 came out, I want to say a year after that series discontinued. And I can't remember the name of it, but it was something the Final Fantasy.
Yeah, the first one came out in December 18th, 1987. So there might have been something before that, like you were saying.
No, I know that there was a whole series of games before that. But that was what, the Japanese release you just looked up?
Probably.
Because it wasn't that long here.
Yeah.
But there were games that were way popular more in Japan than they were over here.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
No. Not good. The next generation, N64 /
Oh, I didn't do Sega.
Okay.
To me, Sega, for Sega, was Sonic and Knuckles.
I count Sonic and Knuckles kind of with Sonic 3 because they were technically Sonic and Knuckles continued.
Well, I didn't have Sonic 3.
Gotcha.
I had Sonic and Knuckles.
Gotcha. And that was a very good game.
Sound quality and visualization, it was really good. And those that may not know this, it was also compatible with Sonic 2. And it had the ability to boost up the graphics of Sonic 2.
Yeah.
Like, it brought Sonic 2 up to its graphics.
And you could play Knuckles in those levels, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where without that cartridge, you could only play either Sonic or Tails.
Yeah.
There was another thing where you could, if you bought the Y, you could put the Y in the second player port of the Sega and hook up a third Sega controller.
I never did that. I've only had 2 controllers.
You never did that.
No. I knew they had a multi.
Did you have Sonic and Knuckles?
Not till later in the collections.
If you had Sonic and Knuckles and you went and bought a Y splitter for the Sega controller, it allowed you to put a third person on the game. So you could have one person playing Sonic, one person playing Tails, and one person playing Knuckles.
Okay. That's interesting.
Okay, Sega Dreamcast.
Let's go back a minute. The N64 and PS1 before we get to the Dreamcast.
Well, was it in Dreamcast and Nintendo 64 in the same era?
That is debatable. Because Dreamcast, some people say it was like the start of the PS2 and Xbox era. Some people consider it.
It was before the PS2 era or PS1 era.
It wasn't before the PS1 because Dreamcast was on par with like PS2.
It was the
Saturn.
It was the last game.
Saturn came before the Dreamcast.
Well, yeah.
And I'd never had a Saturn, so I can't tell you anything about that.
But the Dreamcast was the last console for Sega, and God, like they
had some good games for it. It's hard to say.
They were past their prime because at the time, Nintendo was still using cartridges.
Yeah.
And it was the first one to really go off disc.
Actually, the PlayStation came before the Dreamcast, but it was only like a couple years. And every game for the Dreamcast was awesome. You had Sonic Adventure, which looked amazing. You had Soul Calibur, which looked amazing. You had Tony Hawk, which looked better than the 64 or the PS1. Even though I know you're not the biggest fan of the original Tony Hawk games. It's harder to find a game that didn't look good for that system. I'm just going to go and say Soul Calibur.
I still say that Dreamcast was before PS1.
I think it was after, but let me double check.
Because it was that or...
it was a Saturn, then the Dreamcast.
Okay, Saturn's the first one to do the discs.
Yeah.
Okay. Because
because Dreamcast was 98, so it was a Saturn you're thinking
of. Because PS1 I thought was 99.
95 or 96.
I know it was released a lot earlier in Japan.
Yeah.
And then it took a few years for it to come here.
Yeah, it was like 95, 96. I'm double checking myself though.
But since we're on the thing of
America.
Nintendo 64, and I wanted to make sure like we weren't jumping systems.
That's why we're fact checking ourselves too.
Cough.
Oh, Nintendo 64.
A lot of games on that system were really good, but for some reason, the games that had really good quality visually didn't have good quality audibly.
If you're talking the best of both, I would say the Zelda games for it.
Well, that's what this is. We're listing the best of both, and for each system. Like for me, it'd be Ocarina / Majora's Mask, and I put those in the same category because graphics wise, they were very similar because they use the same assets. They were similar.
Yeah.
I mean, they use the same engine.
Yeah.
They use the same concept art.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure how many people know this, but they can fact check me, as you probably will. I had a burp. But Majora's Mask was a surprise release for a sequel to Ocarina of Time. They were going to have a whole different sequel to Ocarina of Time where the Ocarina played more of a thing. But they didn't want to ruin the story of going back in time, and they didn't want to have people playing the full story and buying the same game again.
Yeah.
Just to have a different experience.
That and this is actually a thing. The developer of Majora's Mask was literally issued a challenge to get a Zelda game that was good done in a year.
Well, done in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
With the lowest profit possible.
Yeah.
And it came out as a dare. But there was actually a planned sequel to Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time that they literally took the concept art from.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to hold the same story as Ocarina of Time, but the dungeons were going to be changed. And for those that may not know, it was originally supposed to be a sequel to Ocarina of Time with the same dungeons, same, mostly same layout. But it was to take place after beating Ganon. And the world resetting. So, of course, the bosses in every dungeon would reset. But instead of a full line, year or two afterwards release of a sequel, the guy behind Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time was dared that he couldn't make a game as good as Ocarina of Time with
the budget he had. And
with a small budget and a small time frame.
And the thing, if he lost, he had to make it for the disc system instead of this cartridge. I think that's what it was.
No, it was going to be the because it wasn't that far past the Nintendo 64 lifespan. Yeah. Matter of fact, it came out with
came out like either a year before,
less than a year after Ocarina of Time.
Yeah,
because they were working on the story of a sequel to Ocarina of Time.
Yeah,
and he's like, "Well, listen up, group. We're changing some things. We're doing this quicker and with less money.
Yeah.
So here's what we're going to do." And they made Majora's Mask.
Yeah. Both are really good games for that system, in my opinion.
And yes, they are really good games. But Majora's Mask, the enemies in it were carryovers from the idea of a legit sequel to Ocarina of Time.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that they had for Ocarina of Time to change up the dungeons and give them a new play style ended up becoming
Master Quest.
Yep. And the first Master Quest for the Nintendo 64 for Ocarina of Time was a black cartridge, which I owned. Yep. And then I bought Ocarina of Time for the GameCube, and it was awesome.
Now, if we're talking the same era, PS1.
Well, we'll go to the PS1 on its own.
Okay.
Nintendo 64. Which games do you think was appealing for that?
I already said Zelda. No, the
Okay.
Anything Nintendo is good. You got Zelda, you got Donkey Kong 64, you got Banjo-Kazooie.
Did we do Sega Genesis?
Yeah.
No, Sega Genesis, Sega Dreamcast.
We did. That was actually in 1998, so it was literally a couple years after the PS1. But you can count that in the same era, but it's tech.
Well,
but,
we're going by the consoles.
Yeah.
Um,
Saturn, I can't say because neither of us really played the
no,
Saturn.
I had, my stepdad had a Dreamcast.
Oh, Dreamcast was awesome.
And the best one that I liked on there, visually and audibly, was Sonic Adventures.
Yeah. I'm going to say Soul Calibur, but that's just my opinion. Sonic Adventure was very good as well.
I thought Soul Calibur could have looked better graphic-wise.
Mm.
And to me, the audio was... It didn't click with me.
With me it did, but that's just differing opinions.
Yeah. PS1, for me, not many games clicked.
You're talking visually and audio. The ones that stick out to me are Metal Gear Solid 1 and Final Fantasy 8. But that's just me. There's games that may be better, may be worse. I know with you said yourself you weren't the biggest fan of most of the graphics on PS1 games.
Well, music,
easily.
audio and visual. For me to put a game down as like best for that console, it has to outright be better audibly and visually for me.
If you're talking strictly audio, Metal Gear Solid.
I thought it had like too much of a crunchy audio
You think so?
to it. But yeah, that might be what was intended.
Yeah.
But one game that I think had a really good audio and visual for the time, Mega Man Legends.
I've seen you play that game. It looked okay for its time on PS1. I'll admit that.
I mean, the controls were kind of janky.
That was normal for that time, though.
But
They were still getting used to it.
that was normal.
Yeah.
You go back and it's like really hard to play that game because you're so used to using a joystick now. It's like,
yeah,
why did we ever use the digital buttons?
Yeah. And for those that wonder why I'm not picking the Tony Hawk games, they don't have an original soundtrack. They do, but they were like licensed songs, and that's not something I would state.
Well, the songs weren't created just for that game.
I mean, I love the soundtrack on those, but they weren't made just for that game, like you just said.
But games that I really think need mentioned are games that like the audio track was made for that game.
Yeah.
Any sort of game where they took the audio from something else, like to me that didn't really fit.
That's why I love the Final Fantasy series too. The music on it was always original, and they did a good job with it.
Yeah, I agree with that. PS2 and Xbox.
You can throw GameCube in it too.
Well, GameCube. Did we mention GameCube?
We talked about it, but we didn't mention in like any game specific.
Okay.
That said, that whole era, there's all kinds of games that were beautiful. A shout out that from Matt that he two games that he mentioned were Okami and Shadow of the Colossus. Both are very beautiful games.
Oh, Shadow of the Colossus. I don't own that game. I never owned the game. I have watched gameplay of it.
Same here. Okami, I have on my Switch. I may record gameplay. I'm not sure, but it's a very beautiful game. Play it if you get the chance.
Shadow of Colossus, if you really want a beautiful experience, and the newer Shadow of Colossus, it only makes the game that much more better.
Yeah.
But the original Shadow of Colossus was really good for its time.
Anything made by Level 5, the cell shading that Level 5 did, amazing. They did Dragon Quest VIII, they did Dark Cloud 2, Rogue Galaxy, bunch of other games I can't think of right now. They had beautiful games.
They do cell shading now as a, I think they're a third party for game designers.
They do their own stuff too, but you're right, they do third party stuff too. Like they were a third party for Square, for Squaresoft or Square Enix at the time for Dragon Quest VIII. They did the gameplay for it. Toriyama did the designs. Level 5 made those designs pop in the game.
One of the things is that they created an engine that like really buffs the cell shading in a lot of video games.
Yeah,
and
it's nice.
Like their whole company was revolved around like enhancing the gaming experience.
Yeah, they were good. Other graphic.
I think we're gonna have to do another topic just on them alone.
Oh yeah, it's just some of the different games. There's so many good Level 5 games. Another one, artistic wise, the Metal Gear Solid 3, beautiful game for PS2 era.
Yes.
God of War games were beautiful for PS2. Xbox, the only one that sticks out to me is Conquer Live and Reloaded. As far as graphic, no, there's good Xbox games. I just don't have as much experience with Xbox.
Star Wars, Clone Wars.
Oh, that is a good game. I remember that. I used to play the top-down thing where you could like bot all the people at once. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, you're talking about Star Wars Commanders.
Something like that, yeah.
But Star Wars Clone Wars, where you actually play as the Jedi.
Yeah.
It takes place of the movie. You're more or less playing the main character for the movie for each level, and like they did something very similar with.
My phone fell.
Okay, but they did something very similar before that, which was episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of piggybacked off of Star Wars Empire Strikes Back for Super Nintendo, ?
I think.
But, like, each time that they made a new game, like, the graphics just...
They always improved on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
people are probably wondering, like, why didn't you say Star Wars Empire Strikes Back? If it was so good.
It's because we didn't think of it.
Well,
nah,
I thought of it, but
goes back to soundtrack and stuff too.
It was, to me, it wasn't that impressive. For its time, it could have been better. Like Zelda for that time did better. It was a side scroller where it should have been like a more top down adventure or like an over shoulder adventure. And at the time of the release, like there were better games at that time.
I can see your point.
I mean, the game was fun, but like to really beat the game, you needed the gun upgrades.
Going back
rather than like using your sword. The only thing your sword was good for was blocking incoming attacks.
Going back to Super Nintendo to backtrack a little bit, Donkey Kong Country.
Oh yeah,
those games were amazing.
That game was awesome.
Yeah. Going back to the PS2 and stuff, GameCube games. You think it looked amazing? That started to find games that didn't look good on GameCube. Because you got Metroid, you got not Soul Calibur 2, even though that was good. You have
Oh, I can tell you one game that sucked on the GameCube. Army Men.
Didn't look good on GameCube.
It sucked on GameCube. Like graphically wise, those that don't know, my toy Army Man was and I probably butchered the name of it, but it's something Army Man. It takes little toy Army Men and makes like a full game out of it. Where
I played plenty of the PS1 and 64
when it
ones.
came out on the Nintendo 64, it graphic wise was like on par. Actually, no, not on par, but better than James Bond at the time.
Oh, it was a very impressive game at the time.
007 GoldenEye. But when they made it ported over to, because it was very late in the N64 lifespan and early enough in the GameCube lifespan that they wanted to test how it would work. They brought it over to the GameCube and it sucked. Like the audio kept crashing. Like there were times where you wouldn't get no freaking background sound. The sounds of the gunshots were ridiculously broken. And there were times where the models would glitch out. You would have a hand going through your head. A leg would kind of go through another leg. And it was just a jumbled mess of, like, very horrible game.
Was this one it, or was it? No, that's a top down. I was trying to see it for myself because I wanted to see like how bad it was, but that wasn't it, was it?
That's a game mode on it.
Okay. But yeah.
But like it was very, very bad.
Yeah. Now good games on that system. It's hard not. There were so many good games for it though. You had
Master Quest. Well, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, that was 64
which
graphics.
Was the Master Quest port over.
Yeah, you had Smash Brothers, which was a huge.
It was a huge success. Mario Kart Double Dash.
Oh yeah, Wind Waker.
Wind Waker. Like
Twilight Princess.
Yeah, it was cartoony, but that was the art style that they were going for.
Yeah.
Twilight Princess had beautiful, beautiful graphics.
And yeah, we know it was a Wii game too, but that's besides the point.
Bite me.
Okay, not kidding.
Well, it came out for the
GameCube too. Yeah.
GameCube first.
Yeah.
Because you think the GameCube was before the Wii.
Yeah, it was like a late release for GameCube, early launch release for Wii, basically.
Yeah, but it took full capability of like what the graphics engine could do for that system.
Yeah.
And like to me that was a beautiful game. Very beautiful game. Like the soundtrack for that game was beautiful. The art style for that game was beautiful. But tell me a Legend of Zelda game that didn't have like a beautiful part to it.
Yeah. They did their stuff well. Even the Game Boy ones were beautiful in their own way. Actually, if you're talking impressive Game Boy games, you can't roll out the Zelda games for Game Boy.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I just wish my eyes were better and I could tell the detail on the tiny little screens.
That's one reason why I enjoy, not sponsored, Switch Online. Bigger screens. Or, we're not saying you should play Nintendo games on an emulator, but emulators are really nice.
Yes. Because an emulator is on a PC, and you can have a big old giant screen as your monitor. Like, freaking rocks, man.
Yeah. And honestly, that's why I do like the Switch. I like going back and playing the Game Boy games and like all that stuff. It's why I'm playing Minish Cap when I have to get back to playing Minish Cap.
You can play Minish Cap on your PC.
I could, but I have to get back to where I was on the Switch. Because somebody stole my Switch off me. No, I'm kidding. He didn't steal it. I let him borrow it. There's a difference.
I have the Switch.
Let's go back up to the next set of systems. PS3 and 360.
Did we do PS2?
Yeah.
Okay.
For PS3, I will say Metal Gear Solid 4. As my favorite, like, graphic-wise game. I'm sure there's better, but that's the one that sticks out to me.
There's a few that are tied for me.
Yeah.
But I want to, like, just say one that was very impressive.
There were so many good games that look good, but that's, like, the one that stuck out to me on that system.
The games that I played on the PS3 that really spoke to me, people that probably know me are probably going to say any wrestling game for that console, and that would be a big old nope.
They look good.
Because the glitches, if we were talking about like the funniest glitches or the most impressive glitches, yeah, big old kudos to WWE for that one. But if I would have to pick one game for the PS3 that I thought was like where I could be like, no matter how much I look at any other game, there's no game gonna compare to this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wanting to say, oh crap, what is it? I would say, not GTA, because like GTA could have been better. Oh, GTA 5 was pretty good for that system.
Mm-hmm.
But there was another game that really stood out to me for that.
But now my Metal Gear Solid 4 was my reason for buying a PS3. Like, I saw that game, I was like, I need to play this game. It's not looked that good.
MGS4 is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to say, I can't really say the Metal Gear Solid 5 because technically they came out for 3, 4, and 5.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
I gotta probably go back to that one.
Yep.
But Raw 2 for 360.
Mm-hmm. Also, we're going on 360. I could see your point with that one. Me for 360, probably Army of Two. That was a good looking game.
Yes, very, very good looking game.
Yep. Followed up by maybe Resident Evil 5. That was a good game.
I'm not a big fan of Resident Evil games. Very tinky controls.
5 wasn't really tanky. It was more action based, but I can see your point. And I know it was released on the PS3 also, but my experience playing RE5 was on the 360 because a friend of mine, we used to play co-op on it all the time. He'd bring his 360 down and we'd sit and play RE5 together.
But 360 was long, like around a long time.
Oh, there were a lot of good games for it too.
Like, the 360 outlived the PS2 and the PS3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 360 was around for a while. You can argue that it's still kind of around because of backwards compatibility. not new games, but
I mean,
yeah,
its actual lifespan for the system.
yeah.
And it outlived the PS2 and the PS3.
Mm-hmm. Because it started with the PS2, because the PS2 was still out when it came out, and then it outlived the PS2.
I thought it was out before the PS2.
No, Xbox was. It was original Xbox, was just PS2
Well, original Xbox was...
it was
Microsoft was making the console at the time, before the PS2.
No, they actually based the original Xbox sort of.
I'm not talking about the original Xbox,
Okay.
but I'm talking about like when they were making the 360.
Oh yeah, they were probably making it around the same time.
The PS2 came out a couple. I don't want to say a couple years before. I think it was a year before the
It might
like.
They might have been thinking of ideas of it before the PS2
Yeah,
or
because
after
they
the PS2.
were launching live at the time.
Yeah, because they launched live with the original Xbox like a year or two after that, and then they released the 360 like a year, they released the 360 near the end of
Because
the PS2's
they
lifespan.
released live very late in like Xbox's lifespan,
Yeah.
and then no sooner did the live come out, they made the announcement for PlayStation 2 to go live.
Yeah, for online.
And then like not even a year into PS2 coming out, the Xbox 360 came out and did a whole thing on live. They had some games that were late in the PS2 era.
Mm-hmm.
They had games that were just originally from them, which was Raw 2 for that system.
Yeah.
Raw 1 was for the regular Xbox.
Yeah, the 360 came out,
and if you had Raw 1, you had the ability to go to Kinect and actually play with the Xbox Kinect.
Yeah,
as a controller.
Yeah, the 360 came out in 2005. The PS3 didn't come out in 2006. So it did come out during the same time as the PS2. I knew it did, but I wasn't sure like what into it. And the PS2 didn't stop making games until
it made games way after PS3 was announced.
Yeah, it came. Yeah, I think the last game released for PS2. Quote me if I'm wrong. Was a sports game for. It was FIFA 2014. I think was the last PS2 game. I could be wrong.
I want to say WWE SmackDown versus Raw 2010.
Yeah.
Because they made the game for PS3, Xbox 360, and PS2.
Mm-hmm.
But the best game for that system, as in music and like quality for the PS3, was like Raw 2. Mm-hmm. It was very, very good.
I was we were both wrong. Apparently the last PS2 game that was released was Pro Evolution Soccer. I knew it was soccer, but I thought
it was a sports game.
Yeah.
You were right about that, but I knew one of the last because it was released on the last year.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the last game. Was 2010.
Yeah.
Either 2010 or 2011.
Yeah. Now we're talking but there were a lot of good looking PS360 games as well. So
you also have to think about any Sony product. They tried to expand their last gen consoles as long as they can.
Yep. Now the next step up, PS4 and Xbox One. I actually didn't have a PS4. But the best looking game that I've seen for it, even though I had to play it on PC, was and I bought it. I didn't emulate a PS4.
Well, you
Spider-Man.
could kind of say that the PS3 is still within that territory of the Xbox One.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But yeah, for like the PS4 slash Xbox One era, if we're talking strictly PS4, I would say the Spider-Man games for it.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And that's from me playing it on PC myself, so I did experience it on
any
the...
sort of like Spider-Man games were really good back then.
Oh yeah.
That or like Arkham games.
Oh, the Arkham games were awesome. I didn't mention those, and those were re-released. They were originally PS3 until 360, but they were re-released on like the PS4 and Xbox One.
Well, like you can quote me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they had an Arkham game for each version of the PlayStation. I mean, I could be wrong, but
yes and no. The PS3 actually had exclusive content with the Joker DLC. For Arkham Asylum. Arkham City, it was the same for both.
Because Arkham Knight was one of the final ones.
Yeah, Arkham Knight was Xbox One and PS4, and those games, all those games are beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, now Telltale has Batman.
Yep. Trying to think of other games for that. There's all kinds of games for those era that like this era slash the Xbox 4 PS1 era that looked really good.
Well, if we're going current era, well, me going back to Xbox One for a second, Phantom Pains.
Phantom Pain?
Yeah. Has really good graphics.
I agree.
And has a beautiful soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, those songs weren't meant for that game, but they fit that game.
Yeah.
They did a beautiful job picking songs for that era.
Mm-hmm.
But the tracks that were meant for that game were done so well.
Mm-hmm.
So well. I want to say beautiful for like how they were done, and it fits 5 so well.
Yeah.
For PlayStation 5 and Xbox X and S, they kind of have very similar games, but they also have games that are particular between Sony and Microsoft.
Yeah. I mean, as far as like good-looking games, I know people dog Starfield, but it's not a bad-looking game. Another one, Baldur's Gate 3, very beautiful game.
And well, you can't really say Starfield right now because it's still getting graphic updates.
And I'm counting it in this generation because it was basically half a game last generation. Cyberpunk looks beautiful.
Yeah. It looks a lot better than what it did when they originally came out.
Yeah.
A lot of the quirks were fixed. And I think that fits this gen console rather than the original console it came out on. Because technically, like, it was not ready.
Just because you fall through the world.
People were spawning through walls. How? Instantly. Like that was completely unplayable when it first came out.
Now, we both agree on the most graphically impressive Switch games. Would be the Zeldas. We're Breath of the Wild / Tears of the Kingdom. They use the same engine, so you can't really say one over the other.
Yeah.
But they were both very beautiful games.
And that's why I figure I mentioned, like, Xbox X and S.
Yeah.
And PlayStation 5 before that because I knew that we had the same feelings about the Switch.
Yeah. And I have a lot of Switch games. I'm pretty sure my collection's shown on some of my Let's Plays.
Now, games that I don't think have any artistic value whatsoever. And I honestly don't care what anybody else thinks of it. Metal Gear Survive.
You can't say it doesn't because it's based off the MGS5 engine, and that has artistic value. So you have to at least give it credit for that, but that's where it ends.
It has no originality. If Metal Gear Survive was just an update and not as like a zombie horror type game, because that's not what Metal Gear is.
You thought it should have been a DLC or like an update?
It should have been like survival mechanic in Fallout. Like, that's what Metal Gear Survive should have been.
Oh, Fallout was a good looking game for Xbox One. Going back to that.
Yes. Fallout 4 for that time period, one of the best looking games. I mean, there were some like hiccups, especially when you're using mods and you're using so many mods, you end up breaking the game.
This makes how many times you've broken Fallout, Zach? How many times have you broken Fallout?
I just want to be able to go back to Sanctuary. I need to go back to Sanctuary. I broke it. I broke Fallout even before using mods. So that's how big I made my freaking places. But there were all like for games that people really dog on so much because of how it looks or how it sounds. Like, I'm not going to say this because of never playing the game, because I have played it and my feeling about the game is still the same. Metal Gear Survive. Worst game ever. I mean, that's my opinion. As much as I hate the game, I gave it a freaking chance.
And those of you that like Metal Gear Survive, good for you.
Yeah. Woohoo.
It's just your opinion.
Yippee dippy doo dah.
Why yippee dippy doo dah? Why not slippy dippy ding dong?
Hippy dippy woo wah. But if you like the game, then okay. That's 100% okay, because everybody's entitled to their own opinion. It's not a what's it called, a democracy.
The democracy is everyone has their
The
dictatorship.
opposite. Yeah, a dictatorship. This isn't a dictatorship. Everybody has the right to have their own opinion. But I do not like the game. I do not like the play style. To me, if it wasn't a Metal Gear game, I would not look at it as a Metal Gear game.
Because it is, you have to judge it by Metal Gear
But
standards.
because it's Metal Gear Survive, I'm judging it by what Metal Gear is. And Metal Gear is a tactical espionage type game. And that's not a freaking zombie apocalypse game. If you want a zombie apocalypse game, just make a freaking zombie apocalypse game. Why?
I don't know. Why what?
People that are wondering why I'm asking why is my brother's got pliers and it's pulling out my coat.
Jokes aside, there's a lot of systems have very good, graphically impressive games, even a bunch of the horrible ones. We mentioned the Switch. What do you think about Game Boy? I know you mentioned Zelda.
Oh, there. Going clear back to the original Game Boy, probably. Let's say Pokemon.
You think Pokemon?
I think Pokemon.
I'll go up there. For me, Pokemon. The original Game Boy version of Donkey Kong looked really nice too. But Pokemon is up there.
I'm thinking Pokemon like for every system because it's only gotten better. Like every handheld version of Pokemon has gotten way better music, way better graphics. Like they push the envelope as much as they can. And that's kind of what I would be looking for in the sense of like what I would judge as a good game.
Now, if we're talking Game Boy Advance, now I'm only stating this because of how good the graphics are and the fact that we're able to put this on the Game Boy Advance. Tony Hawk, Pro Skater 2. Only because of how
Only
impressive.
because they were able to get it to work.
Yes. It is what. Yeah.
It's been scaled down really bad.
You have to give them props. They did a very good job.
Wow.
Now we're talking regular DS. Just because I recently played through the entire game, I was impressed by how well it looked. Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days. You were watching me play it too.
Yes.
Yes, I was playing it emulated with an upscaled, but it's still a beautiful game.
But most beautiful game out of all.
Out of all the games I've played?
Out of all the games in general, the one that is the most attractive facially and audibly.
That is very hard. For me, for wow factor, I'm going to say a tie between Breath of the Wild and MGS4.
I have a triple tie.
Okay, what is it?
The Kingdom Hearts games, Breath of the Wild, and you literally just said it in my brain froze.
You're Solid 4?
5.
You're going to say 5? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we might do another topic on this, maybe with Matt involved. Or we might do a commenter edition if we get enough comments for this. With that, I think I've been John.
I thought I was Sean. No, I'm Matt.
No, you're not Matt.
Well, why do you keep calling me Matt?
Because I'm a dum-dum sometimes.
Well, you call Matt Sack, and you call me Matt. Well, I guess that means that I'm Sack.
And with that, please like, subscribe, hit all the happy buttons.
Yes, make them very happy.
Yes.
Tickle their happy places.
We might get demonetized for
Only if you think of it that way. But, you gotta change the color.
Change the color to what?
It's gray. Because people are colorblind, sir.
But gray is full of darkness. The lack of light.
You have to make sure that it's not red. Because red is bad.
But red is the blood of your enemies.
Yes, and that's bad.
Why is that bad?
Because you should not have blood of your enemies on your computer, sir.
Okay, so we have to hit the button to make it gray so that there's no more enemies on our screen.
Yes, and then you have to make sure that you hit the bell for every red button that you turned gray, so you can make the red button rest in peace.
But the question is, does an angel get its wings every time you ring the bell? Like,
I don't know. Maybe we should get everybody to ring that bell and see if any angels get their wings.
It's a Wonderful Life reference. If you were wondering.
But in all seriousness, like, every subscriber helps the channel. And, you have a little log of, like, your subscriptions. That way, you know, you can go into that area and there's like a little dot that lets you know when we drop a video. Or you can just press the subscribe button so you can press the bell icon so you can be notified every time we drop a video. I'll be taking those pliers.
Never mind.
And with that being said,
Please subscribe and comment so Zach can give me back my pliers.
Yes, I am holding JJ's pliers hostage until we get a response on this video. And with that being said, say goodbye, Vegeta.
I'm all alone in this vast universe. I have been driven beyond normal means to finally become a Super Saiyan.
That's cool, because I'm a Super Saiyan before you.
What?